Way back in 2009, I bought my first ever luxury watch, which was an Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean, the caliber 2500. This was featured in two Bond movies, Casino Royale on the rubber strap, and also in Quantum of Solace on a stainless steel bracelet like this one. I love this watch. It had a very impressive caseback with the Hippocampus Sea Monster. It had an automatic movement. It was a very reliable, solid watch. I absolutely loved it. I wore this for 4 years. I took it everywhere with me, abroad. I wasn't afraid to wear it. No problems. But then I started to get sucked into the idea of replacing it or upgrading, if you will. So I decided to sell it in order to fund a new watch. And I still wanted Omega. It was my favourite brand at the time. And I wanted one of their new in-house watches, which they were pumping out from, I think, 2013 onwards. So fast forwarding then, I started a new job as a sales consultant at Fraser Hart in Cambridge in 2013, and I was drawn in by the 9300 movement Omega watch, which was a Planet Ocean again, but a chronograph this time. This was a much bigger, chunkier, hefty watch. At the time, I was into oversized watches. They were both 45.5 millimeters, but this one was substantially bigger. The pushers made it bigger. The thickness of the watch was huge, and I loved it. It was a tank. So this was the one I decided to upgrade to. So I sold my previous Omega, and I bought this one at a 30% discount off retail. It had everything I wanted, even a see-through caseback, which was one of my major buying points. I liked the fact that you could see the 9300 caliber through the caseback, as you can see here. It was beautiful, nothing like I'd ever seen before, and even though the caseback of my previous Amiga was very attractive, this one just topped it. So, coming on to the part now where things started to go wrong. So I wore it for a few months. I remember taking it on my first holiday wearing the watch, which was in Rome, Italy. No problems at all whilst I was out there. It was only sort of when I got back I noticed that the watch was stopping way before it should have done, given the power reserve it had. So I sent it back, and they corrected the problem. However, as you can see in this image, the second problem I had not more than a month later was with the minute and hour counter on the right hand side. Whenever I would reset the watch, it would fire back to the 1 minute position instead of the 12, and this really annoyed me. Some people might say it's a small thing, but it's a big thing when it comes to having a chronograph watch. So now I'm really angry. Two faults with the watch in a short space of time. I don't like the watch anymore. I've fallen out of love with it. I don't trust the 9300 movement anymore. So I asked the AD for a replacement. Now this is where it gets really interesting, because Amiga would not accept responsibility for there being a manufacturing fault. They said the reason that the minute and hour counter came off alignment was because the case had received a shock due to me wearing it, and this is what caused it to come off alignment from the 12 o'clock position. This was completely untrue. There was no damage to the watch which would suggest it had a shock of that kind, and I remember writing a very lengthy email to the regional manager of Fraser Hart, because he's the one who fed this information back to me from Amiga. And my argument was, Amiga are effectively saying that their very expensive watch, this was retailed at over £5,000, they're saying that this watch cannot handle a shock to the case, and that it's going to cause problems with the chronograph should you wear it and shock it. I said, not only haven't shocked it, but if I had, this excuse that they're giving is complete nonsense. These are very well built watches. They're designed to handle 600 meters worth of pressure from the ocean should you go diving with it. The chronograph should not come off its alignment if it receives a shock. So I said, I don't accept their explanation. They are passing the buck, and I would like the authorized dealer, I'd like Fraser Hart to do something about it, because this is not my fault. The area manager agreed, and he authorised me to have a replacement watch of my choosing up to the amount that I had already paid, or any extra if I wanted a watch that cost more. And the final decision I made was the Amiga Seamaster Planet Ocean GMT. This again was another in-house movement from Amiga. They were all starting to go in-house from this point forward. They discontinued the modified ETA versions. And the GMT really spoke to me. It had a lovely dark blue dial with bright orange contrasting colours for the GMT hand and on the bezel. It was much brighter than I'd previously gone for. I'd always stuck to black dials, but I just wanted something a little bit more eye-catching, if you will, and this one was the one that did it for me. I got a lot of use out of the GMT function. In some ways I'd used it more than the chronograph movement previously, and I didn't want to go back to chronograph given my bad experience. And again, this was very, very nice watch, 43.5mm. It was a new case size. It actually started to steer away from wanting oversized watches and wanting something a little bit more proportionate, and I didn't have any issues with this Amiga whatsoever. Due to unforeseen circumstances in 2015, I had to part ways with the Amiga Good Planet GMT, and I opted for a cheaper alternative in the form of another GMT, but this time the 50th anniversary Seamaster. Now, this is a really fun watch to wear. I loved the wave pattern dial. I'd always been a fan of it, and it had a real retro feel to it. I'm almost taking a step back in some regards, but I enjoyed the watch while I had it, but I liked it but didn't love it, hence I ended up selling it, and I went without an Amiga for quite some time. The irony of this story is that if I could repeat the entire experience again, I would have kept my original Amiga Seamaster Planet Ocean 2500. I still think today this watch really holds its own. It stands the test of time in terms of the movement, the design, everything about it, in my opinion, is just almost perfect. The replacements that I had for this watch, for me, don't even come close. It's funny that I've reverted completely back to my original taste in watches. The simpler the better, really. I don't really care too much for chronographs. I don't mind the GMT. I have a GMT watch in my collection at the moment. I like it very much. But when I think about it, the most simple of watches, the 3 hands and a date, is all you need. It was all I need in a watch. I've now currently got an Amiga 2531.80. This is the Bond watch featured in Pierce Brosnan's 4 Bond movies, the Amiga Seamaster Professional 300 with the blue wave dial. This is the one I currently own, and it's the only Amiga that I have. I like it almost as much as the original Amiga Planet Ocean, just not quite. However, I had this burning desire to have this watch for a long time, and I've finally got one now, and I will be happy to say that it's not going anywhere. I'm going to be keeping this one. So that's my journey. I've learned a lot from this experience. I'm kind of glad that I had it at the same time as wishing I still had the original one that I got rid of. But that being said, this is what experiences are all about. You learn from certain failures, and hopefully you come out cleaner on the other side. Please let me know if you've had any similar experiences. Can you top my bad experience? Have you had a worse one? Have you had to fight your corner to get what you want in terms of a result from a bad experience with a watch manufacturer or an authorized dealer? Please let me know in the comments. My only advice to you would be, if you haven't had one of these experiences already, if you do have one in the future, just be nice about it. Don't throw your weight around in the authorized dealer or to the manufacturer themselves. Just be nice, put your point across, don't get walked over. Unfortunately, more often than not, people have this belief that the customer is always right, and therefore, they can do no wrong. The trouble with this is that this is a very antiquated approach. Businesses will tend to not care that they're going to get left a bad review, because they're quite frankly not going to be able to avoid one with certain people, and they'll just decide to put up a wall and say no at the cost of having bad feedback. And that's all down to the way you treat them at the end of the day, and I kind of agree with that. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked it. Click like and subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. Thank you very much.